Okay guys, so in this video we're going to talk about the primary tools for achieving goals. And the last video we talked about consider these questions about each goal, remember? And one of the things that we ended with was trying to identify your limiting self-beliefs and what would prevent you from achieving the goal. And we're going to talk about that right after this section again. And the reason why I kind of went out a little bit out of order is because I wanted to talk about the primary tools for achieving goals because it's very brief. But positive self-talk and affirmations, we're going to be covering that next week a lot more in depth. Earlier in this video or this week's lesson, I was mentioning how we often default to thinking about our past failures and our self-criticisms where we talk bad and call each, think about it guys. I still do it, I'm not going to lie. When I do something dumb, I still call myself a dummy. You dummy, or you asshole. I say stuff like that in my mind. I'm trying to get better. I'm doing it less and less often now than I used to. But how quick are we to judge ourselves? We're so damn critical of ourselves all the time. And that's what happens is we are critical of ourselves, we judge ourselves, and we criticize. We throw insults at ourselves all the time, right? And we do it consistently. Over and over and over, dozens of times per day. And guys, I bet a lot of you do it and aren't even aware of it. But once you start to bring your self-image into the forefront of your mind, that's when you start to become aware of these negative self-talks and these insults that we throw at ourselves all day long. And if you had a friend that talked to you as poorly as you talk to yourself, they wouldn't be your friend for long, most likely, unless you're a masochist. You know what I mean? So my point is that positive self-talk and affirmations is the number one primary tool for achieving goals. And positive affirmations, guys, I know a lot of you have heard about I am rich, and you say I am rich 100 times, and next thing you know you're rich. Well, there's more to it than that. We're not going to cover that right now. We're going to cover that in a week, next week. But there are ways to do positive affirmations that are much more effective than saying something that is a non-truth. It's untrue. Creates conflict, right? When you tell yourself, I am healthy and happy and lean and fit, but you're 300 pounds and you can't go up a flight of stairs without holding the guardrail halfway up and wheezing and huffing and puffing, then there's a conflict in your mind because you're trying to convince your mind of something that's untrue. And so it really kind of removes the motivation from doing positive, that positive affirmations are supposed to produce. And so we're going to talk about some methods for positive affirmations and self-talk that will actually work for you, or at least they should. I've found them to be quite incredible for me. So we'll talk about that next week. But that's step one, is primary tools for achieving goals is to begin the positive self-talk. Start changing the habit from criticizing yourself all the time to talking yourself up. Start congratulating yourself, patting yourself on the back for accomplishments, no matter how small they may be, right? Like for example, if you go, we'll use the fitness one as an example again, guys. Let's just say that you typically you go to a mall and you always go up the elevator to go to the next floor or whatever. I'm just using this as an example. Take the stairs, right? And then congratulate yourself for it and say, you know what? Great job. Instead of, oh, you dummy, you did something stupid again and all this kind of crap that we always talk to ourselves. Do something ever so small and then congratulate yourself for it. Take the time to provide yourself or give yourself recognition for doing something positive. Be nice to somebody. Make a phone call to somebody you haven't talked to in a while and just to say hi and encourage them about something. Pay them a compliment. Anything at all. Just start doing these little daily activities where you can start to find reasons to praise yourself. Not in an arrogant way or in a conceited way, but to just start overcoming the bad habit of always criticizing and always judging yourself. And again, always taking all of your failures and embarrassments and all the stuff that happens negative in your life and literally fashioning it into a club and beating your self-esteem into submission, which is what we typically do, right? That's a creative image or visualization of what we do to ourselves when we pick on ourselves. So begin developing the habit of positive self-talk and affirmations. It's not going to happen overnight, guys. You need to do it consistently, and you need to practice it and repeat it over and over and over and over and over until you rewire your brain, literally reprogram your brain in the neural pathways within your brain to eliminate those negative self-beliefs and start cultivating and growing these positive self-beliefs. And that's going to happen with consistency, time, and effort. So positive self-talk and affirmations. Number 2 is visualization and imagery. Visualization and imagery is so important because we can use our imagination to create our future. Think about it. Everything that is in this world, guys, that is man-made has started in somebody's imagination. Absolutely everything. So we have that ability. We have that awesome power that, in my belief, God has granted us with. I can't speak for all of you, but in my belief, God has granted us the ability to achieve whatever we believe, right? At first, you must believe, and then you can achieve. Whatever you can visualize in your mind's eye, you can manifest into reality with belief and action, right? And so visualization and imagery is absolutely critical to achieving any goal, because you need to visualize the goal being achieved. You need to future cast in order to create the belief that you can do it. And then that also identifies or reveals the path on how to get there, right? And that's what the visualization and the imagery is all about. So those are the 2 primary tools. So we're going to talk about how to identify limiting self-beliefs. And the reason why we're going to talk about that is because I mentioned earlier that it's very difficult sometimes to identify limiting self-beliefs. And so there's a couple of techniques that I'm going to share with you here. All right, so this one takes a few steps, and this is going to use some visualization and some imagery to try to help you identify. So this is going to require you to get into a lower level of a deeper state of mind. So it's like, you got to think about, if you guys are familiar with music, you know that there are octaves in music. So like octaves in a piano would be the different notes that at different octaves or levels of sound frequency, right? So you got the lower octaves at the left side of the piano and the higher octaves at the right side, higher frequency sounds. It's the same thing with your brain. Your brain has different octave levels of brainwave activity, different frequencies. And on the normal conscious level, it's called the beta state, and the beta frequency, and that's somewhere around 25 cycles per second. Or hertz. Then there's the alpha frequency, which is somewhere around 10 to 15 or so. Then there's the theta frequency, which is typically, and the alpha frequency is, by the way, which we program our minds when we get into that deeper level of mind to start programming through meditation, for example, and doing visualization and imagery. We typically do that from an alpha state. If we do it from a beta state, you won't get to use all of your creative imagery and all your other sensory perception, because you're thinking pretty much primarily in dialogue and in words and language terms, and so it's much more difficult to cultivate the emotion and the intensity that you need in order to really drive it home into your subconscious. And that's why it's much better to program at an alpha level, because at an alpha level your brain waves slow down, and it's very much like the state at which, when you first wake up in the morning, or the state right when you're laying in bed at night, and right in between when you're awake and you're actually asleep, that kind of transition period where you're in a bit of a daze. It's kind of like a half sleep, half awake state. That's what an alpha state can produce. And I know, because I go to that level every day now as part of my meditation practice. And then once I get down to that level, that's when I'll start my visualization and imagery, and I'll start asking myself questions, literally in my mind, about asking questions about issues or problems, things that obstacles that I'm trying to overcome, and that kind of stuff. And it's amazing, because I believe that we have the answer to almost everything already in us. It's just a matter of being quiet enough, long enough, and allowing your mind to have it bubble up. Here's a quick image that kind of makes a lot of sense to me. think about like a pool, a pond, a puddle of water, but like, you know, a pond, I would say, a lake, whatever, but very, very still. And think about the surface of the water as our conscious mind. And everything below the surface is our subconscious mind. And think about taking a pebble and dropping, or a little rock, you know, and dropping it in the water. It passes right through that surface layer, and then it drops down, you know, however deep it may go into the water. And it creates these ripples, right? And these ripples go across your conscious mind all the way out to the end. But the pebble, as it's sinking, oftentimes will produce, you know, little air bubbles. And so you got to think, like, when we ask questions in our conscious mind, it's like a surface type question, right? That just, it kind of radiates outward, and if we don't have an answer immediately, a lot of the times we just give up, or we move on, or we go seek the answer elsewhere, or hope that it's going to reveal itself at some time later on in the future. But if we were to sit long enough to observe the pebble falling, so the question going deeper and deeper down into our conscious, and we just sit and observe and allow those little bubbles that start to bubble up from deep below the pond surface. Those little bubbles start to surface up, and what do? They come to the surface, which is your conscious mind. And so to me, that's a very cool image of how we can plant questions into our subconscious. And if we have practiced enough to be able to allow our mind to be calm and quiet, and just observe it instead of always trying to direct our thoughts and our internal dialogue. If we just sit back and observe, we can allow our subconscious mind to actually reveal the answers to us. And sometimes it's a very, very subtle revelation, right? It's very subtle in the fact that it's not like you hear the words, and some of you may, but for me, it's not that I hear the words like my own voice in my head all of a sudden, you know, speak the answer to me. That's not how it works. I get a feeling. It's like intuition. It's a gut feeling almost. And all of a sudden I know which direction I should go, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to talk about the visualization and imagery, and then here are some techniques that you can use for identifying limiting self-beliefs, which requires this visualization and imagery. So I would encourage you to get to a lower level of consciousness. Practice the meditation, the breathing. I mentioned using the Headspace app. I went over that the first week enormously, but I love the Headspace app. But any app like that will do. Go through at least 10 minutes of deep breathing exercise, with your eyes closed. I prefer it with my eyes closed. You can do it with your eyes open, but I get much more vivid visualizations with my eyes closed. So go through a 10-minute relaxation and deep breathing exercise, which will bring you down to that alpha level. And then from there, that's when you start practicing some of these, where you start asking yourselves questions. You start planting seeds, guys, and you allow those seeds to take root. And they will. Deep down in the subconscious level mind, they'll take root. And it might take some time for those roots to start to grow and bubble up and break through the surface into your conscious mind. But trust me, if you start planting the seeds, those seeds will start to grow, okay? And it's just a matter of time with proper nurturing. Here's another analogy. If you're a farmer, right, or if you want to go plant a flower or a tomato plant or whatever, you wanted to go plant a plant, you'd go, pull the soil back. First of all, you'd hope that it would be good soil, so you hope your mind's a good fertile ground for this kind of stuff. But you pull the soil back, you plant the seed, and you cover it with good soil on top, or what do they call it, topsoil, dirt, whatever. Put that on top, and then what are you going to do? You're going to take care of that. You're going to water it. You're going to pull weeds from around the edges and stuff and things like that. You're going to take care of that in order for that to grow. And within time, that little seed is going to start to break through the surface, and it's going to start to collect sunlight. You don't give up then. You still need to keep clearing the weeds out. You still need to make sure it's getting water and it's getting proper sunlight and stuff like that. That's what you got to think about with this meditative practice, guys, and visualization and imagery. Just think about your subconscious mind being the soil, the ground, the earth that you're going to plant the seeds in. So first you need to go clear the path. You need to clear out the clutter from that soil. So you need to clear your conscious mind in that never-ending, incessant dialogue that just never stops. You guys know what I'm talking about. And the way that you clear that path to plant the seed is to slow your mind down and to breathe and to meditate and get to a alpha state instead of the beta state that we operate in at all hours of our waking lives, right? Like for real. And when we're awake, we're in the beta state unless we take the time and intentionally go down to an alpha level, which can be done with breathing and meditation and relaxation. So my point is you clear the path with meditation and relaxation, and primarily through breathing, focused breathing, and then you go plant the seed by asking questions that you want the answer revealed from your subconscious, or planting thoughts, images, visualizations, things like that you want to plant into your subconscious. Then you don't just get up and walk away and that's it. You got to make sure that you maintain it. You got to keep your thoughts clear. You got to keep the path, the area around where you planted that seed clear. How do you do that? Continued visualization, continued meditation and practice, and imagery. Okay, relaxation, breathing techniques. Do that on a consistent and daily basis. You want to water that seed, which means you want to keep bringing that visualization and that creative imagery back into focus in your mind's eye. Play it on the theater of your mind. The mental images, right? The mental movie screen. You want to play that over and over again as you nurture that seed that you planted. It will sprout roots and it will start to take and grow and grow. And as you do that, you cultivate that thought, that goal, that feeling. You cultivate that, it's going to grow, and eventually it will break through to the conscious mind. And at that point, now you can, it's like, if you've ever heard about people being in a state of flow, that's what it's like. It's because it's become such a part of your being that now it is even permeated into your conscious thought to where it's now automatic. It's like a reflex, right? It's muscle memory. You don't even think about it anymore. It's just automatic. You just do. You just take action towards that goal on a daily basis. And all it took was requiring you to put the work in up front, just like a farmer does. You get that? So, all right. So go to level, right? Relax, breathe, get down to your alpha level. And this is what we're going to do. Look at the areas in your life that are lacking fulfillment. Have a specific question in mind that you would like answered. For example, why am I unable to increase sales? Right? That could be a good question. Then after identifying the question, ponder it for a few moments. But don't try to answer it. Just think about the question. Here's the thing. When we start to analyze questions, guys, with our conscious mind, all we're relying on is our conscious mind to answer it. And our conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg, right? We want to access the deeper levels of mind, the subconscious, where all of the experience, all of the knowledge, all of everything that we've ever experienced in our entire life is stored in our subconscious mind. Sometimes so deep that we, no matter how much conscious effort we put into it, we're never going to expose those thoughts or those answers. But when you allow your, and instead of trying to answer it consciously, if you just ponder, think about, the pontificate about the question itself, and just think about the question, not the answer, then you'll start to plant the seed in your subconscious that you're looking for the answer, that you want your subconscious to produce the answer instead of you trying to force it. Okay, so again, it's relying on intuition, which I think human intuition is our connection to God. I truly believe that. Like, God gives us the ability to we have intuition about things, and that's like a gut feeling, and with effort we can improve that. Okay, so anyways, after identifying the question, ponder for a few minutes, but don't try to answer it. Just be curious about the question. It's called priming the pump, right? It's that curiosity that will help to reveal that question, the answer to that question. So next, relax, go down the level, and begin image streaming to warm up your imagery facilities. What I mean by that is just and we'll talk about this more in the visualization techniques section, but we're going to talk about some of the various ways that you can image stream. And image stream means like start visualizing a scene of something like, for example, Lee Poulos, he calls it his magical garden. Maxwell Maltz and Matt Fury call it the theater of the mind. Another one I was listening to called it the mental playhouse. Whatever you call it, it doesn't matter. Just start to think about a somewhere that is a safe place for you in your mind that you can go to on a regular basis when you have these types of questions that you're going to be asking. And just image streaming is just kind of defining the details of all of the surroundings, the environment, and that includes sight, sound, touch, texture, smells, feelings, everything that you could think of. Like, when I'm thinking about my imagery stuff and I go down the level and I start image streaming to kind of prime the pump of my senses, my sensory perception, right? Like I want to kind of set my senses on fire, so to speak, within my own creative imagery. So I start thinking about, like, I use this one image over and over again of my daughter and I going on a hike, and this beautiful hike in Virginia. It's called White Oak Canyon. There's this lower falls. It's a waterfall. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's just absolutely tranquil and gorgeous. And I use that often in my my image streaming, because that's a very serene, tranquil environment. And I got to be there with my little girl, who's my best friend in the whole world, and that's probably one of the best moments or memories of my entire life, is this hiking trip that I've been on with her, and the time that we spent there at this lower falls, just together, just being one with nature, and the sun shining and feeling the sun on the skin and looking up to the blue skies through the canopy of the trees. And we did it in October, so it was like yellow leaves in Virginia and the kind of the mountainside, so the leaves were gorgeous, and there's a slight breeze, and you could hear the water coming down the rocks and the rapids, and you could hear the rustling of the leaves and the little animals scurrying around on the forest floor, all this kind of stuff. So very, very sensory rich environment, and so that's a really good experience for me. And so image streaming is nothing more than just recalling something in your mind that is it doesn't have to be a tranquil scene, but I recommend that you do it because that helps to keep you in that relaxed state, and just start describing it in your mind, even aloud, guys. It's okay to go to level and start talking out loud and just describe, and don't try to hold back and don't try to force the description. Just let it flow. Just let the description in your mind, the dialogue of what it is that you're seeing, and the sights and the sounds and the tastes and the feelings and the smells and all of the emotions that you're feeling, just start describing that. And guys, you can do this very, very quickly. What I like about Lee Poulos and his techniques is that he puts a time limit of 30 seconds on all these different visualization techniques. He says everything should be done in 30 seconds. So when I'm talking about going down the level and visualizing this tranquil scene of my daughter and I, that I visit this place often in my head, almost daily. I don't take 10 minutes or 15 minutes to describe this every day. I can run through it very quickly, because remember, your subconscious mind has no reference to time. We do consciously. We do at the beta level. Everything that we do is defined by time. But at the subconscious level, the alpha level and lower levels, theta and delta as well, there is no concept of time. That's why dreams, guys, when you dream, it can feel like an eternity, but a dream could literally be less than 60 seconds long or 2 minutes long, you know what I mean? But it could feel like hours. It could feel like it happened the entire night you slept, but a dream is typically just under 2 minutes, It's because there's no concept of time and at lower levels of consciousness. And so when I talk about image streaming, guys, if you're talking out loud, you're going to be restricted by how fast you can talk. But if you're doing it in your head, you can run through a scene very, very quickly and describe it in vivid detail. And what's awesome about it is the more you image stream, the more detail, especially if you continue visiting the same scene over and over and over again, the level of detail that you'll be able to recall with a little bit of practice will be absolutely amazing. It's, to me, just one of the most fascinating things in the world, is to be able to recall a memory, and then just by recalling that memory and then describing the details in my mind's eye and my own internal dialogue over and over and over again, how much more detail starts to be stitched back into that image, if that makes sense, over time. And so what happens is, the more and more you do it, the quicker you can describe that image in your mind in vivid detail, it will take you less time. You'll be able to achieve the same level of mind or consciousness, the deeper level of consciousness, in shorter and shorter periods of time, to where it becomes almost on demand. I'm not there yet, but I can get down to an alpha level within about maybe 180 seconds to 240, so a minute and a half to 2 minutes. I can get down to an alpha level now, and it's just from practice. It took 10 or 15 minutes before, but over the last 4 months or so now that I've been doing this daily, I can get down to level in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, which is awesome because I can do it at almost any time during the day. I don't typically do it throughout the day. Most of the time I do it in the morning. But there have been some times where I've had something particularly stressful or something that I'm anxious about or whatever, and I'll take a few moments to go down to level, and then I'll just, I'll plant a seed, right? I'll plant the seed and say, no, you know what, you're going to do fine. And you start thinking about past successes, once impossible, now easy, all these techniques that I've been talking about for the last several weeks. I can get to that level in a minute and a half, and then I can spend 5 to 8 minutes. So it's no more than 10 minutes tops. I can spend 5 to 8 minutes actually visualizing, recalling past successes, recalling times of pride and achievement, and things like that, and then transfer that into what I'm about to do, like the next thing that I'm going to do, whatever that task is that was causing anxiety. And what's amazing is then that's what we called shadow boxing in the previous week's lesson, where you kind of rehearse what you want to happen in that event that you're about to do, that you're about to take action on, and then you kind of rehearse it with those feelings of success and motivation and achievement and enthusiasm. You rehearse it in your mind, and then when you come out of level, which is just a matter of opening your eyes, taking a deep breath, stretching, and then boom, you're back to beta level, and now you have that feeling already ingrained into you. So when you go, that the anxiousness falls away. There may still be a little bit of tension, but it's not that debilitating tension that typically occurs with anxiety. Does that make sense? So it's a way to kind of calm the fears and give you courage and confidence to go accomplish or take action on that next task, whatever it may be. So anyways, again, I'm really sorry I'm elaborating so much on this, but I don't want this to be so out in the ether that nobody does it. Okay, I want you to understand why this is so important. So we're going to start back from the beginning. I'm going to run through those first 3 steps very quickly, and then we're going to finish this up. Number 1 is look at the areas in your life that are lacking fulfillment. Have a specific question in mind that you would like answered. For example, why am I unable to increase sales? That's just an example. After identifying the question, ponder it for a few moments, but don't try to answer it. Just be curious about the question. That's called priming the pump. So remember, it's the curiosity about the question itself, not the answer. You don't want to try to answer it with your conscious mind. That's not the point. If that was the point, you wouldn't need to do any of this, right? Number 3, relax, go to level, and begin image streaming to warm up your imagery facilities. That's what I was talking about, guys. You can do it very, very quickly. It's going to take some practice up front, guys, but do it every day. Within 2 or 3 weeks, you're going to have a much more clearer image that you can recall on demand and go through your image streaming procedure. All right? Shift imagery to walking down a long corridor hall with closed doors on either side. So this is where you start to get into not recalling a past memory, which is visualization, right? So that's visualizing something that's already occurred. Now you're going to use your imagination 100%. So this is a fabricated event, right? This is a fabricated environment. So that's where it gets a little bit tougher. And that's why, like I said, I mentioned practicing your visualization on past memories, finding those memories that were particularly happy or joyful or enthusiastic or successful or prideful or loving or funny, anything positive emotions. Find those types of memories and then start building on those memories and recalling them with as much detail as possible. Use that as your image streaming warm-up, because as you do that more, you're going to basically flex your imagination muscles, right? You're going to work out, exercise your imagination muscle, and it becomes stronger, so that when you start going into these fabricated environments that are 100% a product of your imagination, not of past memory and experience, it'll be easier to do. Does that make sense? It's easier to do when you've exercised that imagination muscle. If you just try to imagine completely fabricated environments with no practice of and use of your imagination muscle, so to speak, it's going to be very difficult. Like, I found it damn near impossible But I've been working on this now for 4 months. So it's becoming a lot easier for me to imagine stuff that I haven't seen already, okay? So shift your imagery to walking down a long corridor hall with closed doors on either side. As you continue to walk down the hall, keep pondering the question. Remember, don't force the answer. Just at your level, okay, so at the alpha level, you've already done your image streaming. Now you're imagining that you're walking down a long hall and there's doors on either side of the hall. They're all closed, every single one of them. As you're walking down the hall, you want to think about the question, the question, the question. Be curious about the question, okay? As your intuition activates, that's what I was talking about earlier, your intuition, a light will appear over one of these doors. Open that door and enter the space on the other side. Begin image streaming what you see and experience. Describe this aloud. The reason I say that is because here's the thing. You've imagined this. It's fabricated. You're walking down a hall. You're just going to keep being curious about the question, asking the question, thinking about the question, not the answer, but the motivation, thinking about the question itself. Eventually, one of the doors are going to light up, and you're going to walk through that door. You're going to open the door, and you're going to walk into that space. And remember, this is 100% fabricated, guys. Just walk into that room and start describing what it is that you see. It's image streaming, okay? And start saying it out loud. And the reason why is because now you're also activating 2 other sentences, your auditory sense and the speech, spoken word, plus your auditory from being able to hear it, right? So you're activating 2 more senses. And when you start to image stream and you start activating all these sentences, or excuse me, all these senses, then your subconscious mind does not know the difference between a real and imagined event. So when you're thinking about a past experience and recalling a memory and image streaming on that memory and adding detail, that's something that you've already experienced. So you did actually hear words and feel things and hear sounds because they really occurred. When you're doing creative imagery and visualization completely in the imagination, that not from past experience, you have to create some of these sensory experiences. And sometimes just imagining them isn't enough. It's better if you can actually produce some physical action into it as well. And without getting up and going through emotion as if you were walking through a door and describing a room, which would kind of probably take you out of alpha level anyways, you can say things out loud, and that activates the physical act of spoken word and the physical act of hearing that spoken word. So that's adding 2 physical senses, like in the here and now, to your imaginary environment, if that makes sense. Once you walk through that door that lit up, begin image streaming what you see and experience. Repeat this again. Don't expect the answer to come out in your image streaming through that first door you walk through. It may, but its chances are it won't. The idea is not to force the answer, guys. It's to get your creative juices flowing. It's to open up your subconscious mind to the possibility of, which therein lies the answer somewhere deep. And so the practice of going through and doing this image streaming and starting to speak out loud of something that's 100% imaginary, all you're doing is activating your intuition. You're basically warming it up. Okay, so you want to repeat this again. If trouble in answering the question through describing the experience alone, then ask the right brain subconscious for the answer. So, for example, if describing the room through image streaming that you walk through alone is not producing the result. So if you do this a second time and you still haven't got a result, then do it a third time. Walk back out of that room, back into the corridor. Walk back up and down the hall again. Just keep pondering that question. Eventually another door will light up. Might be the same door again, who knows. Go through that door and then ask your right brain subconscious, start asking the question, why am I unable to increase sales? What is the best thing that I can do to deal with this roadblock? Does that make sense? So you start planting that question. Remember, we talked about this before, throwing a pebble in a pond, planting a seed like a farmer, right? And so if you don't, through the image streaming exercise, immediately get the answer, or even after a couple of attempts, then start asking the question. And again, say it out loud. Ask it out loud. Why am I unable to increase sales? Or whatever the goal, the question was that you, the limiting self-belief that you identified earlier. What is the best thing that I can do to deal with this roadblock? Because you start planning those questions, and what do we do as humans, guys? It's human nature. We want to answer questions, right? And so by planning those kind of ideas, guys, you know, another one is, why am I unable to achieve my goals even though I have defined them and I'm visualizing them, right? That's another one. At our subconscious level are limiting self-beliefs, and we self-sabotage on a subliminal level, right? And that's where I was talking about in the previous video that, and it's funny, here's a quote, but you always get what you want even if it's not what you're asking for. And so what I mean by that is our conscious mind, we think we know what we want. We may speak it out loud. We might write it down through a traditional normal goal setting exercise where we just write down our goals. But if we have those limiting self-beliefs, then we're always going to get what we want, even if it's not what we're asking for, which means on a subliminal, subconscious level, we are getting exactly what we want because our mind, our limiting self-belief, our self-esteem, our self-image doesn't believe that we deserve it, or that we can get it, that we can achieve it, we can accomplish it. Does that make sense? And so that's why it's so important to start reprogramming your subconscious mind. And that's what I was getting at with this whole image streaming and this visualization and imagery, and trying to identify limiting self-beliefs. And that's just one technique. There's some other techniques too. We may cover at a later date, guys, but I want to wrap this video up. Going through that motion, that exercise of, go into level, image streaming, so that you get, prime the pump, get your creative juices flowing, your sensory facilities kind of primed up and ready to go. And then you shift your focus to that imaginary environment of walking down a long corridor with halls, or a long corridor or a hall with doors on either side, and just pondering that question over and over and over again, the limiting self-belief, like why am I unable to increase sales, or why am I unable to lose weight, why am I unable to stop smoking, why am I unable to make cold calls, whatever, why am I unable to complete a project that I started, whatever they may be. You just consider that question over and over and over again, and be really genuinely curious about the question and not so much the answer. Then when the feeling, the intuition pulls you to a specific door, you just open the door and immediately go in and start image streaming. And speak aloud, say it out loud. It's okay, but you do that because it activates those two physical senses, like the physical acts of speaking and hearing. And just start describing. And if the answer doesn't come to you, then repeat the process. Go back out and do it again. Try it again. If it doesn't come back after 2 or 3 attempts, then fine. Go in and start asking, planting that seed, that question in your subconscious. Why am I unable to increase sales? Why am I unable to quit smoking? Guys, just focus on one at a time, by the way. What is the best thing I can do to deal with the roadblock? What are actions that I can take right now to help me resolve this issue? Those kind of questions, because you'll notice that by now you've activated that side of your brain and your subconscious level. It should reveal the answer to you. So practice that, guys. And in the next video, we're going to talk about the 6 building blocks of our reality and the 3 tools of transforming reality. And that's it. We're going to be finally done for this week. And then I'll just go over a brief overview for what's coming the following week. Okay? So we'll see you in the next video.